Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of Scouted here on the Cannon Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. If you're here with us for the first time, make sure you hit like and subscribe and all those good things. We are here to talk Jamie Bino Gittens, or supposedly last summer he changed to just Jamie Gittens. So we'll refer to him as Gittens from henceforth. We just did an hour looking at clips of him, which you can check out from the link in the description. I think I'll pin a comment or whatever. Really interesting to see out of this one. It's quite a highly requested one on Jamie Gittens. So it was a really interesting one. You can check that out for free on Patreon, or you can sign up as a YouTube member as well for a small fee a month to check out all that good stuff, as well as loads of other good content here on the Cannon Podcast. But we're here to talk Mr. Gittens and what he might bring to Arsenal. So I'm sure people have heard of Jamie Gittens, but if you haven't, he's 20 years old. He was born in Reading in England. He plays for Borussia Dortmund, number 43, came through Reading, Chelsea, spent 5 years at Reading, then went to the Man City Academy, because of course he did, and then went over to Borussia Dortmund and has sort of had his breakthrough at Dortmund here. We want to talk the player, obviously the profile. We'll look at his data. We want to come to your questions and so on and so forth. Probably a good place to start, though, is with this little graph that I've got, Georgia boy. Hello, George. Sorry, I'm going to introduce you. All right. This graph here from stats.ai, which probably explains Gittens pretty well in terms of his strengths. So this is the top 5 leagues for U23 players. This is updated up to a couple of days ago in February. This looks at big chances created per 90 on the X-axis. No, the X is across. On the Y-axis. Sorry if you nerds out there. And successful dribbles per 90. And you can see Bino Gittens right out there in terms of direct dribbles in Europe for U23 players.
Do you know the trick how to remember that? X and Y?
Across. You taught me that. I just can't remember.
And Y, it has a vertical thing in it.
Oh, there you go. You learn something new every day. George, on reflection on this, in terms of Gittens, obviously we just had a look at him in the clips. Talk us through his strengths, because I think this really sort of sums up who Gittens is in terms of the peak of the player and the things we really like.
It's fun because when you do a scout and I didn't have access to these numbers, it's great that the numbers back up some of the conclusions. I mean, you're talking about a extremely gifted 1v1 dribbler. As far as the actual dribbling technique, I don't know if people will go into this, but he's a little bit more in profile to your Doku's or your Alan St. Maximins of the world. As far as being somebody that 1v1 can go in and out both sides, has a brilliant ability to cross off both feet, can get shots off supremely. I think his ability to create separation from a standstill is amazing. He's got incredibly quick feet in tight spaces. And the big dribbling caveat that, we talked about is I noticed this thing with him where the ball will maintain speed, but he himself as a dribbler changes speed drastically. And it's what creates the difference in terms of him being able to be such an elite 1v1 dribbler. So he's going to be incredibly important in low block situations and game breaking. But while that's a 10 out of 10 for me, there are some issues, particularly the way he deals with contact from behind is really poor right now. It's something that he has to work on. And his first touch in terms of receiving kind of from the midfield is something that, he's going to have to work in deeper areas. Once it's in the final third, it's all incredibly secure and tight. But as far as progressing you up the pitch from either your own first phase or carrying yourself up the pitch, Jeremy Bino Gittens has an issue over 20 yards. I think in the first 5, 10, 15 yards, he's great. But other than that, he isn't somebody that can carry in those huge distances. You're going to find, especially when he gets challenged, he's going to struggle to create and maintain that distance over longer areas. So I don't think I see him as much of an outlet per se as, a Leao or a Semenyo in that kind of mold. He can't do those things. But once you're in the final third, he is probably going to be one of the best 1v1 dribblers in the world in terms of creating separation, beating this man 1v1, very, very individualistic as well as a primary person. Like, he has difficulty keeping his head up in terms of finding people in the final. And when he does, he expects the ball back. Like, that's just the type of player he is in general. But His frame is really, really interesting. 5'9", but all legs. Like his leg ratio to his torso is huge. So he's got a really big area in which he can affect with his dribbling, in which he can dig out crosses. So I think when grown out, you're looking at somebody that's going to have a really big zone of influence as far as his dribbling goes, but also somebody that can find some unique finishes because, again, his legs are allow him to find angles that a shorter frame wouldn't do. So yeah, very interesting prospect, 10 out of 10 in maybe a specific scenario, a specific game state. But I do think there are some things to work on in other areas.
Yeah. Yeah, only a couple of things. I'm presuming you called him Jeremy on purpose.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course. I think this is a player who probably most people are similar to me. And have seen it in clips. I think this is the sort of players that you look at and you see a moment for him. And some of his moments, and let's be clear, as we saw on the Scout, are incredible. Like he pulls out a shot from somewhere. His ability to as you mentioned there, to generate shots in terms of his shot volume. We talked about on the Semenyo Scouted we did. Just that ability to get shots off is something that I think we really miss in this Arsenal team, and something that absolutely we can look at Gittens and say, look, that skill just in isolation is something we absolutely love. Only a couple of things to add. I think in his dribbling, the thing that I was really impressed with is one that sort of ball control that he does have that you alluded to. Also his ability to see where the space is going to be when he is dribbling on the fly. Also being on the dribble and getting those crosses off. The quality he has in movement, dribbling, the decision making he makes is top quality. He really is. And then probably another thing to say. I mean, he is right-footed, but again, you if you hadn't watched him at all, you really wouldn't know. Like you really wouldn't know. I think you probably can tell eventually, but just from the things that I'd seen before, I didn't know what foot he was. That is how quality is off his left foot. I think he can take you both sides. He's a really exciting player, absolutely really exciting player. The question is he right for Arsenal? Is he worth probably spending 60, 70, 80 million pounds on, which is probably what he'd be if you're trying to get him out of Dortmund at the minute, compared to a Semenyo? Is he right for us compared to a Barcola, a Williams, whatever it might be? Let's just look at the numbers quickly before we sort of maybe get into that in terms of questions, in terms of where the data goes. Because, I think in terms of, as I sort of cycle through this, so this is Gittens compared to other attacking midfielders and wingers over the last 365 days. In terms of goals and assists, he's not a sort of output volume machine, and that's something we'll come on to a little bit later. He's very good off the dribble, as we've sort of spoken to, but I think, as you can see there, in terms of progressive carries, you're getting a very, very high volume dribbler, who's someone who I think you said you see becoming an output guy maybe a little bit in the future, but isn't that right now?
Mm-hmm. For sure, because just his technique in terms of his ball striking and his frame and the way he creates separation for a shot is incredible. Like he does that incredibly consistently. So I think you almost see it here. Like his goals are great, but he doesn't have a lot of XG, which just implies that, he's making the most out of situations, right? Like he's not somebody that gets put in situations to score, but then he does score. So I think that'll continue, and he'll be able to cheat XG quite a bit over his career.
Yeah.
And
do that in the goals minus XG and non-penalty goals minus XG. Yeah.
But also you can see like his XG per shot is really low because he makes very bad decisions. Like this is also a very big weakness that we found in the Scouted, like his decision making on the shots are really, really poor. And that's going to be a huge area of improvement that he needs to do. It's part of why he's so raw. But again, you see it in terms of the stats there, why they're so big in terms of him being able to score. Because I think he'll have technique that mean even if he's not making the right decision all the time, he'll still get goals, and he'll refine that as he grows. Yeah.
And just looking at the passing numbers, I'm unfortunately not surprised to see what they are. Obviously, this is a guy who's a forward, and you maybe don't expect that, but he's being compared. He ultimately there's a selfishness to his play which I like. But that's because we need that a little bit, but the selfishness can go too far. And I think as you sort of cycle through the numbers here, you can sort of see that. I'm not surprised to see, though, there in the goal and shot creating actions, the shot creating actions from a take on. That is it again. This is the player he is. Absolutely. I think if that's what you want, which we'll come to when we compare him to other players, sure. If you're looking for a guy who's going to constantly dribble, constantly get you out of the situations, Gittens is your guy. But the question is, and then in terms of goal creating actions, similarly, in terms of his defensive contribution, out of possession. The problem is on those clips, we don't necessarily see him out of possession when the other team have possession. But we did look at his defending duels and his sort of attacking duels and how he approaches the duels in general.
Look at challenges lost.
Yeah, it was a bit of a red flag for me. In terms of the way he approaches duels and in terms of the way he can be pushed off the ball. You sort of spoke about that in possession, but also out of possession as well. I think it's a concern, and probably when we're looking at Mikel Arteta, something he would have down as a big red flag.
Yeah, and I don't think he's somebody to run off the back shoulder as much because, again, he doesn't have that physical running capacity over those longer yards. So really, when he does run, quote unquote, off the ball in possession, it's a little bit more to do with underlaps, and his approach to duels is poor. Like, he can be pushed off the ball. He is weak under contact right now. He's fine when he's running to goal. Like, if he's running to goal and people are beside him and it's shoulder to shoulder, he's strong. He can hold that off, and he can like raise an arm to like do well to complete the action there. But again, it's that whole, I'm going to receive wide with my opposing fullback coming up my backside and pressuring me to go back. I could lose it. I will lose it. And I think like if you were to get a glimpse across 4 or 5 games, it's very possible that he's won 1 attacking duel out of like 8. Like, he is somebody that's a lot of work. It's probably one of his biggest areas of weakness, I would say, that I think that is coachable. There's certain things that I think aren't coachable. That for me is coachable, but it is very poor right now.
Yeah. I want to spend most of the rest of this looking at the DL aspect, but let's quickly go to the tactics board and just sort of have a look at how he'd fit in, because I think the most interesting conversation here is the deal, to be honest. And we had a lot of questions about that, which we'll come to as well. Let's have a look at him sort of on the pitch. I mean, he's had experience on the right, but I think probably would come in for Arsenal as a left-sided player, and you've obviously got him there as well.
Yeah, and I think like from my perspective, I have Thomas Partey here, but he's obviously not going to stay. So like I'm gonna remove him. This would be my favorite iteration of this so far, with Calafiori as somebody that can offer something on the outside. Now Gittens is somebody that doesn't mind. He can go in and out when he's in these final third areas and he's got the ball. This is somebody that can, from a standstill, take you byline to deliver a cross inside, take you byline with his left foot to deliver a targeted ball across. Like, that's something he can do. As far as like coming inside and being in these areas in which if Calafiori bumps up and you've got Miles to thread you through, I think what I really like is Binu Gittens right now. He has an ability to really generate that type of shot, far post, which we've seen. Look, he makes some wrong decisions in which he tries to go near post, but I think as far as finishing goes, he is pretty consistent in terms of having that whipped far post finish, which is really nice. And I think this pod in general carries a lot of, symmetry in general. You've got Calafiori. The only problem is you've got 2 players here that I think struggle over long distances, but I mean, Arsenal aren't going to face that game state. Rarely, maybe once or twice in a season. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, you can see situations even when, Binu Gittens is touchline and, Miles is inside, right? And, he's trying to find solutions. This is a guy that can find solutions in the 1v1 brilliantly. Yeah.
I think the only 2 things to add is, I think for someone who does struggle maybe under contact a little bit, and, that can be coached. It's not completely, terminal. To pair him alongside a Miles and a Calafiori and a Gabriel on that side, I think would be really useful for him to have those guys who are really intense 1v1, or we know Calafiori can misjudge them, but physically can sort of deal with contact. And also with Havertz. Well, I was just going to say with Havertz in the box, I think we've seen with his crossing and stuff. I think Havertz would probably enjoy a Gittens in terms of his creative qualities, in terms of his crossing, because off both sides he can really, really do well. So I think Havertz would, especially at the back post, would thrive a bit with Gittens.
Yeah, I did want to say probably Ben White's not the type of pairing you would do here, because he is very much a touchline winger. So you'd have a Timber in this kind of iteration. I did want to say he can play right wing. We didn't see it because clearly with Dortmund, that's somebody that, has used him primarily off the left wing. But I did want to say, it's wrong to say that he can't be a right winger. He can very much in a Sterling. Actually, Sterling is probably one of the closer comparisons.
Quite a good comparison
to him in the modern game. I do think he struggles with his decision making, but this is somebody that's really good in the first 5, 10, 15 yards. He can take you by line. He actually has got some pretty good targeted crossing. So yeah, Gittens can play right wing. You can see this. I don't love this iteration, but you can have it. You know what I mean? You have your two touchline wingers that really spread play, and you're ideally bringing kind of a situation in which you've overloaded the center of the pitch, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see this as an option, I guess. Yeah. I don't think it would maximize Gittens, but certainly is an option. But to end, you're probably looking at a situation in which you've got him off the left wing, you've got Saka off here, and together they make a fairly good pairing, because Saka is going to be somebody that can carry the ball distance here. Like when we bring everybody back, this is probably the last point I'll make on this. So when we bring everybody back into kind of our normal shape, yes, I've got Miles starting. That's how much I believe in him. And Gittens, in terms of receiving the ball, maybe from a Calafiori in this situation, and then carrying from here all the way into the final third, that's something he'll struggle with. Saka can do that. You're going to need to have Gittens a little bit higher up the pitch. And Saka might be somebody that's carrying your kind of up the pitch, so to speak. But Gittens is high and wide, and isolated, because he's not somebody that can carry over those larger distances. So yeah, that's how I would kind of conclude it.
Yeah, and to be fair, from those positions, he can create something. And I think I've spoken before about in this current Arsenal team, a winger on the left who in those situations can get you out to in would be really useful and beneficial, and that would be Gittens. Let's talk, though, the deal. I think I'm going to say, just for myself, this isn't the right move for Arsenal. It's not right. And there's a number of reasons for that. For me, Arsenal need to sign at least one win now forward. I can't see us signing two win now, by which I mean 100 million plus talents forwards in this window. I think we'll probably sign one and then another. And I don't know who that is. I don't know if it's a winger. I don't know if it's a centre forward. I don't know. But Jamie Gittens is not a win now forward. And then the question becomes, okay, if you're not my win now forward, can you become my prospect player? And the reason why I don't think he's the right pick over, let's say, a Williams or a Semenyo, whatever it might be, and we should come on to that comparison in a second, is I worry about him it's the limitations we've said. I worry about him under contact. I worry about the translation to the Premier League. I worry that he's great for a certain situation, as we've discussed, in terms of low blocks. But as you said, in terms of carrying over longer distances, his out of possession work, maybe getting a little bit lost and being a little bit tunnel vision in terms of how he approaches things. I don't think Arteta would like him anyway. And then it comes to, okay, if you're my prospect guy, what am I trying to solve? I'm trying to solve a shot volume, I guess, issue at Arsenal. That maybe solve with the other forward. You maybe solve that for me, but you don't solve, I would say, necessarily the other issues that I might want from that. I'm looking around at other prospects, and I'm looking around at Nico Williams. I'm looking around at Semenyo. The quality under contact, the quality in the Premier League, for me, is so much better and so much more proven. Gittens, I think, is one of those players, unfortunately, as we kind of mentioned earlier, who people will love because he has these moments of magic, and you go, that's exactly what we need. But I just think for the specific problems at Arsenal, I can't see that. And for the price it would cost, that's a win now player. It's a 70, 80, we're getting towards win now money, and that's not right for me. So yeah, I just think as a deal, it's a bit of a non-starter personally.
Like if Nico Williams is a prospect, Jeremy Binu Gittens is level 1.
He does know he's called
like
Jamie,
level 3.
He's joking. Yep.
I don't think that comes across, but I got to play that. But yes, like he is incredibly raw. And again, like my comparisons are your Alan St. Maximens, are my Jeremy Doku's. That's the type of profile that you're getting. He's 10 out of 10 in a specific scenario in a game state, which I think is a low block killer. And I think at his top core, even ignoring the prospect, like, can you coach him, George, to become something? Like, how big is the ceiling? I don't think he's as big as other wingers in the world, like a Barcola, because he doesn't have that physical capacity, which limits the cap for me on the potential immediately. I think he can become more secure under contact eventually. That's going to be a long road, and it's going to be 3 years, 2 to 3 years. you're going to need a year on its own for translation to the Premier League, and then it's going to need another 2-3 years to develop that mind. By 23, 24, you're looking at a player that you can reliably be one of the better ones in the world. But still, at his peak, at his best, if he got all the coaching in the world, I still would limit him to being a low block killer. I don't know about him being a mid block killer. He'll have his moments against high lines in which he's able to exploit and deliver a very good cross. But as far as being a physical outlet from a goal kick, that'll be something he'll never be able to do. As far as progressing you up the pitch from your first phase or in your own half to the final third is something he'll never be great at. But once he's in the final third, once you isolate him in the final third, he will give you impact. And he will be somebody that will beat a man consistently, be 10 out of 10 in that regard. But like you said, when you start hitting the 65 million pounds and more, I can't have a specialist who's isolated in one game. I'm not buying 65 million pounds for Zinchenko in defense, which is the version of this in attack, where you're going to get a 10 out of 10 version of somebody in a particular game state who's very specific. And that can work if your system is specific and you rely on that being specific. But I don't know if that's something that I'm willing to do amongst the whole development thing that we need. So when you talk about comparing him to others, I'll maybe save that part of my rant to the questions, because I'm sure it'll come up about comparing it to Williams and to Semenyo and to others. Yeah,
I just think for me, it becomes a bit of a non-starter when you talk about the deal. Like ultimately, like I just when you're paying the kind of money, I think his contract expires in 2028. When you're paying the kind of money that Dortmund will ask for, I said in the scouting, and I will say it again here. He's the sort of player I wish had just come through our youth academy, because in terms of issues this season, he'd have been so brilliant for us in certain game states and would have solved so many issues. And then you sell him for 60, 70 million abroad and hey presto, you're fine. He's not the sort of talent that I look at and go, he solves Arsenal's issues right now and makes sense for us in the summer. Let's do that then. Let's try and rank.
Sorry, can I just really specific? You know what he reminds me quite a bit of? The idea of Calafiori. So your defense is complete. Okay, and we buy a Calafiori that could be something later on, but very specific, right? It's great to have. I don't think you're going to be annoyed at having Jeremy Binu Gittens in the squad.
Yeah.
But and it's a joke. But I think by having him with our problems, you need him to be this person that he isn't, and that's going to lead to a lot of frustration.
Let's answer the questions, because I suppose the main questions were really, how does he rank compared to, let's do Semenyo, Barcola, and Williams. Those were the four. Can I guess where you're going to rank them?
Yeah, sure.
I think you're going to say, just overall, Barcola, Semenyo, Williams, Gittens. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Been recording with you for too long. Go
on. Okay, look, they're different players, like all of them, actually. Like Barcola is the unicorn of that lot. I don't think that it's fair. He, to me, is going to be the best wing prospect. If you want the best wing prospect in world football, it's Barcola for me. Now, compared to the other two, they're slightly different. Semenyo is more in the Leao mold of player, which is why I lean him more than a Nico Williams. But I've said this on Twitter. It really depends on your center forward, mate. Like, if I'm buying Sesko, as much as I believe Semenyo is better now and maybe a better deal, Nico Williams makes more sense to complement a Benjamin Sesko. If you're buying an Alexander Isak, a Semenyo works a lot better than a Nico Williams for me. Because Nico Williams is more of a creative type of winger. And again, Jamie, I'll use his right name because just to show you guys I know him. But he is a game-breaking winger in the sense of very much like an Alan St. Maximin or a Doku. And the frustrating differences between the two are going to be the physical quirks, right? But also I think Nico Williams makes the right decision. Like a lot of times when we were looking at that scouted, decision-making was not something that you associate with Nico Williams as much of problems. He's got a lot more control, and the tempo of his play is a lot better in terms of control. Like an attack can flow through Nico Williams. I know Gittens is like a maverick. He really is that kind of isolated individual to break down a specific 1v1. And I think both of those players solve more holes. They are very good 1v1 dribblers. They won't be as good as Binu Gittens, but they're very good. If Binu Gittens is a 10, they're an 8 or a 9, right? But both of those players can actually be an outlet. Nico Williams carries more power in longer distances. He won't be as poppy as a Binu Gittens in the first 5 yards, but he's quicker over longer distances. He is more ambipedal than Binu Gittens as well. And I think that he's also already got better fundamentals and more farther along the line as far as output goes. Semenyo is going to create you more shots, generally speaking, be a little bit more of a bully and a physical outlet from goal kicks. So they're guys that solve a 10 out of 10 hole, but also a 7 or an 8 out of 10 in a different area of the pitch. Whereas Binu Gittens has his 10 out of 10, but the other things are currently a 5 out of 10 and require major investment in.
Yeah. And I think, to be fair to Gittens, like, the quality he shows on the dribble can translate to help him with the physical sort of, I guess, limitations that he has. Like, we spoke about this on the Scouted, like, you can move him further inside. He can find options and find ways of getting past players without having to physically battle them off. But you're talking when he's 25, 26, 27, and Arsenal don't have time to do that. And Arteta doesn't have time to do that. I think this is a player, frankly, that Arteta will obviously admire. Will obviously look at and say this is there's clearly quality here. As we said in the Scouted, there's someone at Borussia Dortmund who knows youth football in England inside out and is doing very, very well out of it. Maybe we need that guy. But yeah, I just don't think it's suitable for Arsenal right now.
He strikes Chelsea's project now more than Arsenal's. This is like Arsenal 2021. Maybe you could understand like that kind of somebody that could develop, but maybe somebody that you grow out of in your final form. Again, a very, very, very good player. Like you have to be harsh with the value that's being placed on these type of players, right? And where Arsenal are right now, under the context of having not bought a forward for the freaking year 2024, we don't have time to do that. Like if he was a third attacker, right, in already buying 2, I'd have a very different tune. I'd be saying, wow, what a purchase. That would be incredible if he's the third attacker of 2 that we already have. So, yeah.
And just to be clear, as we kind of close this out, he's 20. He's 20 years old. Like I don't think either of us are saying this. This is a washed player who's never going to make it. He's going to be a brilliant football player. The question is, Arsenal needs to win the Premier League next season, and is he going to help us do that? Yeah. Very, very unlikely. So we'll finish there. As we said, if you want to check out the Scatter, please do from the link in the description. You can see clips of him. We broke down sort of his dribbling style and that sort of stuff, so you can go have a look at that. As always, we have loads of episodes of Scatter which you can go check out. So we've done Šeško, we've done Williams, we've done a lot of the players that we mentioned today. We've done Semenyo recently. I think we're going to do a sort of a refreshed Šeško at some point. We've never done an Isak one, which I want to do at some point because that is the love of my life. But whether that happens or not is another question. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. If you do enjoy these videos, make sure you like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.